I'm just so thrilled to have you all join us today. I met Lorca last summer and was just blown away by her personally, and then also just her knowledge about the way we live life. And she's joining us from Bozeman, Montana today. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her and why I asked her to join us today. So last fall, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article on awe and wonder. And I'm like, Monica, I think we should do something on awe and wonder in the new year. I'm like, who would be good for that? She's like, Lorca. And I'm like, yes, Lorca would be amazing at talking about awe and wonder. I was just so blown away in our last session on resiliency, and it turned out to be one of our favorite sessions of the year. And so, Lorca, I'm so thrilled that you could join us today talking about awe and wonder. I'm so excited. Our prep sessions have been amazing. Lorca is on the faculty of Montana State University in Human Leadership and Development. Welcome, Lorca.
Thank you so much.
So happy to see you, and I can't wait to join you in your studio someday. There in Bozeman, Montana, another favorite place of mine. And so, in order to get started today, Lorca, I'd love for you to start by getting us in a meditative state for this session today. So, I'm just going to toss it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I love doing these with you. And so I think the best thing actually is not meditative in the sense of like, come right into your body and being present, right? Because that's really at the heart of meditation. And so I think what I'm going to invite you to do is to come into your body and at the same time, hold in your memory your most powerful experience of awe, of being utterly amazed, of being surprised in a way that not just is like, oh, that's new, but in a way that kind of cracks your world open. And so just go back into that moment. And while you're just relive it, right? And while you're reliving it, feel again what happened in your body when that happened. And keep breathing.
It's a good idea. It's a very good idea.
Right? I mean, maybe in that moment you actually stopped breathing for a little bit, or your breathing got really fast, right? So the invitation right now actually is to both simultaneously experience right now in your body, but how your body experiences amazement. Just utter, a sense of renewing and a sense of a different world than it was a few minutes before. And notice the level of energy that you have, that when you go back to that place, your energy rises. And I even find that my body kind of opens, right? That I have this kind of capacity that expands at the same time. So that might even show up like the softening in my collarbones, that kind of my shoulders going back or my spine straightening. And then sometimes my breath gets deeper or even shallower, right? Because that's actually a very normal response to excitement. Yeah. And right here in this moment, when you're there in that memory and here with me, you can also notice that you're not anywhere else. This has a beautiful capacity to let the rest of your life temporarily move into the background, and that you are very, very in the moment. Okay. So this is important, like just human emotional and mental hygiene, that we spend time completely right here. So what we're going to be exploring today is how it does show up in our bodies and the impact it has on our bodies, both to experience it and to stop experiencing it. And I do want to take a look at what are the costs actually of not doing this. My filter for absolutely everything is our capacity for feeding an internal energy into ourselves so that it doesn't matter what we're meeting, right? That we're meeting something hard or easy, we're just completely ready to be with that thing. And that's what I name resilience, that capacity, that fullness. And so looking at the costs of it, when Joni asked me to speak about awe and wonder and amazement, for me, this isn't just something like pleasant in life. This is actually a very key arena for feeding resilience and how we show up in the world, which is more and more important every day. So, and spend a little time, how looking each of us at how it shows up in our own lives, right? And has in the past, and how we anticipate it showing up in the future, and how we design for that. And then looking at like, well, how do we access it, right? What are the ways in which we both access it in terms of finding it out in the world, and then how do we reinvent ourselves every day as someone who is really open and really porous to it. So that's what I'm looking at today.
And Lorca, we would love for you to share in the chat your moment of awe that you remember. And, mine that came to mind was an experience that I had with Monica, our co-creator, and we were hiking the high route from Chamonix to the Matterhorn in Zermatt. And when I saw the Matterhorn, you just took me back to that moment where I was just so awestruck that I could hardly move. I got tears in my eyes, and it was just such an emotional overwhelm. And so if you would share your experience in the chat, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
My daughter being born is an awe moment. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Karen. And if anybody else wants to share, we'll read those as we go along here. But Lorca, let's talk about awe and wonder in the way that we can have like some muscular memory around awe and wonder. Like, how do we do that? And how do we make it more a part of our life every day?
Yeah. So I think it's worth recognizing that, awe and amazement and wonder, and I'm kind of going to use those three terms, although they do have differences, subtleties, but that it's worth recognizing that obviously when you're struck by awe, that isn't something that in many cases, it's not even something that you can resist, right? And simultaneously, it's not something you can just do, you can't, it would be entirely possible, for example, for someone to walk up and see something really extraordinary and not open to it, right? In a lot of cases. And so it's simultaneously something that is externally prompted very often. It can be internally prompted, but it also is a function of who we are, right? And how strong our stories are and how strong our armor is that allows us to have capacity to be with change, to be with the new. So when I look at muscular memory, this is one of those places where we can actually harness a tool which is with us all the time for the rest of our life, this life, and that's available to us, and that we can hone in the sense that we strengthen its radar. And so what I did with you just now with that memory, and simultaneously having you bring it into your body, is what I love is for myself to have that body experience, the somatic nervous system sensitive experience of awe be something that I know, that I recognize when it shows up, right? Because, we get messages from our body all the day, right? And a lot of those messages we are either trained or designed, or our system is set up to ignore, because if not, it's too much, right? We cannot process, the human brain cannot process all of the sensory things that come in. But if you are able to identify, hone in on certain experiences that are important, that you not miss them, right? Then you have a shortcut, right? So if you start becoming very familiar, every time your brain says, then you do a check-in, right? what's happening in my shoulders? What's happening with my skin? Can I feel the ground under my feet? Do I have a tight ball in my chest? Do I feel like I'm floating? Whatever it is, right? That the next time you start to experience something amazing, you're like, oh, there's the thing, right? And I'm going to open to it a little bit more. I'm going to pay just a little bit more attention. I'm going to look a little bit deeper. Like maybe there's a wormhole of amazement if I just notice it, right? I had a joke when I was little that, if someone said, what religion are you? I'd say, I'm a coincidentalist, right? I believe that there are coincidences everywhere. There are more of them than any of us know, and that my job is to find them.
And Lorca, I just have to ask you, how old were you at that moment in time? I just need to know.
I think I'm not exactly sure, but maybe around 11 or something.
That's amazing, and that doesn't surprise me at all, knowing you. After we had that conversation about finding awe in the moments, as every day now when I take my walk, I notice that there's awe all around me. It doesn't have to be seen Zermatt or, those big moments in life. It's like magical moments everywhere. And a quick story that I shared with you was there was this video years ago about this old English sheepdog, and they had wetted him down, and they were taking a look at what happened in the environment when that dog shook. And it was amazing, because there's those moments that are everywhere. There's little critters everywhere. And I still go back to that all the time about thinking like the minute wonder and awe that surrounds us, and we don't even know it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So this could actually be a game you play or an exercise. You're like, hey, I'm going out and I'm going to actually I'm going to notice 5 new things, right? Or I'm going to, and I'm going to ask myself, how would I experience my environment right now if I had a really powerful microscope, or if I kept a telescope on my wall, or do I have it? Hold on a second. Okay, somewhere in my mad scientist lab here, I have my grandmother's handheld magnifying glass, and all I have to do is pick up that magnifying glass and look at the plants and look at my dog and look at a piece of jewelry that I have, or a jawbone of something, or that, and I'm like, okay, whoa, that didn't exist for me before. I didn't understand that, right? And now there's even more. So every single little thing becomes a wormhole, right? You're like, I could go down into this forever. There are people who dedicate their lives, right, to studying this, and it never stops for them, and they never stop being fascinated. And so it's not on, being bored becomes kind of weird, actually.
How can anybody be bored?
You're like,
so one of the things that you mentioned just a few moments ago is that we all have a body armor. Yeah. And, so many of us walk around with this armor that you can't really get to. And you have a wonderful analogy about shedding our shell. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. There's more talk about vulnerability now than probably anywhere in history, right? Anytime. And so, and the costs of not having it and the benefits of engaging in it. And it is completely true that some of the most precious things that we'll ever know exist on through that window, right? On the other side. And so, love and intimacy and being genuine and being authentic and being seen, right? Truly seen, right? Don't want to die without any of that. So this is a skill that's obviously valuable to have. I think it's really worth taking a step back and looking at it also through the lens of compassion, which says there is nothing in nature that says that we should be vulnerable all the time in all the ways, right? Nature abounds in shells. It abounds in natural armor. It abounds in protective mechanisms, right? Either behavioral or structural or illusory even, right? so that we can protect ourselves from hard things as we need to, especially when we are in a place of low ebb, low water level.
Mhm.
And so what we have the capacity to do is just ensconce ourselves in the vast expanse of nature, which has a solution for this, which is we build shells when we need them, and then we crack open and let them fall away. And for a little while, we are especially available to the world, right? Available to experience and to sensation and to emotion and to clarity, right, of purpose. And so, and those, I mean, we treasure those moments, even if we feel a little bit like, but they cause, I think, course corrections in our life where we're able to say, oh gosh, now that I'm out here and, you know, I'm actually still okay. And you know what, these kinds of things don't matter anymore to me. I was worried about what that person was thinking, and I was worried about, you know, these expectations, and like, nope, that's really not what's important, and I'm going to move forward here. And so, but those moments never last forever, right? Some parts of them continue on because we set structures in place that let them move forward into our story. But the other ones, we rebuild a shell like a crab does, right? A crab, as it's growing, it naturally, the shell doesn't fit anymore, crack open. Or a seed, right? A seed underground, and it gets watered and it has all the nutrients right there. And it either stays in its seed and nothing ever happens, or it cracks open and all the things happen. So this is what we can invite for ourselves, and become someone who is simultaneously skilled, right? Ideally at both cracking open and of building just enough shell that's needed and never more. And it's possible to
I just love that
like
analogy so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem is that as a culture, we are so invited again and again and again to gather stuff to ourselves, right? And to protect and to, you know, and we get hurt and we're like, okay, never going to have that happen again. And we forget that it is also the housekeeping of a life to continually reevaluate the protections that we've put in place and say, is this what I still want?
I just love that. And I love how you always go back to nature to bring these analogies to us, because it's just so, you know, so many of us gain our strength from nature, and you just pull that all together for me. And that's why you blow my mind all the time. But I wanted to talk about, you know, we have these shells, these armors that we wear, and we also have blind spots. So how do we address or even recognize these blind spots that we have, Lorca, as we look at awe and wonder and amazement in life? I mean, how do we expand that capacity of ours?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that gets me there, just getting really curious about, like, I mean, surveying for blind spots is a fascinating thing, right? How do you look for the invisible? How do you find out if it's there?
Right. How do you identify that?
Right? Yeah. And this is actually a big part of, I mean, this is actually a chunk of work that I do when I'm working with someone through time, where we go specifically after these because they cost, right? And so I think probably the simplest runway into starting that conversation of like, I know I have blind spots, 100%, right? Everybody, we always at some point have blind spots, and they change and they move around, right? They're interesting live wildlife in the terrain, right? So how do we get really curious about this really elusive thing that is actually affecting our life and possibly in really serious ways, right? In our relationships and our work and our how we love. And so probably the best indicator species of like a big blind spot is drama. Because blind spots are where we are not being present and responsive, right? When something comes to us that's like somebody is like, right? And if we are present and responsive with them and relaxed and fluid, then we completely are right with what they are, and we are with what we are, and we take the next indicated and graceful action, right? And so that's deeply satisfying. That's a beautiful, healthy moving forward.
Mhm.
And where it gets tricky is where if we have a blind spot there, then we are not being present and responsive. We are reactive, and not to them. We're reactive to something in ourselves, right? We can be reacting to trauma. We can be reacting to armor. We can be reacting to something so painful that we can't look at it yet, right? We just are not ready. And so, and the result of that is I don't want to say ill-considered, because it's not considered at all. It's an inefficient, inelegant response, right? It's prickly and spiky. And so our response is going to not meet the need, and it's going to cause waves. It's going to cause extra turmoil. And so drama is a beautiful example of extra turmoil that is not leading towards the solution. And so this is really a lovely invitation that we have all the time. We can say, I consistently have drama at work, or with this particular human, or right now with my son, or and if I start seeing patterns, right, then I can say, that's actually not about that person, that's here, right? And I can start gently excavating with the companionship of whoever feels appropriate, right? So I can say, you know what, I think I do have a thing about dealing with authority, or I have a thing about dealing with my son right now, and it's actually not about him. This is actually my idea of like how I should be behaving, or how he should be behaving. Shoulds are another really good example of indicator of, yeah. If anywhere where you've got lots of shoulds, you're like, that's a place to start looking, where I can start smoothing these things out.
So can I just interrupt you for a moment, because I think this is so important. Self-awareness. How do we get there? I mean, we all have triggers, as you were talking about, and these moments in our lives that come to us, and we're just like, what do we do with that? But you do have to be self-aware to actually stop and say, this is a problem, and this is an opportunity, right?
Yes. In fact, I've developed a whole like flock of resilience games that are complete. They're what I call the being with branch of games. And it's if I have all these elephants in the room, right, which are causing drama, right, then I create ways of in fun or gentle ways of being with, right, the elephant in the room. I call some of them I call dates with elephants, that games.
Dates with elephants?
Dates with elephants, yeah.
Okay, that's a new one. I love it.
Well,
See, another
like marriage,
nature
right?
analogy.
You don't launch yourself into marriage with something that feels unknown and different, and right? You go on a date. You get curious, you ask questions, you hang out and do something fun and nice together. So that's the mechanism, right? And it's kind of exciting and scary and fun at the same time. So it's we can, once we actually are very clear about what the issue is, then we're like 80% to the solution. And so then we can, in my case, I invent a game and they go play it. But yes, this capacity to honor ourselves and treat ourselves with the same gentleness and respect that we would treat someone who we're getting to know, right? And take someone's hand and lead them, together with you. And so, once I identify there might be an issue around authority, I'm just picking something off the top of my head, right? Then I might say, okay, who's coming with me on this, right? And for some people I think you're usually pretty clear who you want. You're like, I want to have long talks with my mentor. I want to talk to my priest or minister, or I want to go on long runs, or I don't know. I mean, just like you find who you're ready for, a coach of some kind, or a poet, or So, and you can feel in all of this, right? There's no judgment, there's no weakness, there's no wrongness, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just so human, and you're actually ahead of everybody else because you're getting curious and looking at it.
And we'll be talking about curiosity a little bit more, but right now we would love to have people write a story. Why don't you talk about that? We're going to take about 3 minutes. So hopefully you've all grabbed either your journal or piece of paper and pen, but have that nearby because we have an invitation for you. So go ahead, Lorca.
So I think what I'd like you to write about just for a minute, the invitation here is to, I want you to just get present with what happens when this is not how you're being, right? When we are scared or have been harmed, or we've just been kind of going along in a rut for a long time, or maybe we have knowingly or unknowingly surrounded ourselves with people who are looking at the world like this, right?
Mhm.
And so the invitation here is to do some writing about when being narrow like that, like when I have been focused in on what I know and staying in that world, right? Playing safe, like it cost me something, right?
Mhm.
What did it cost you?
So let's take about 2.5 minutes here, and we're just going to remain silent while you write and think through this question of when it hasn't served you. So let's go ahead and start that time now.
And if it helps you, you might think of others in your life who you recognize this very clearly in, and then come back in and notice how that might have showed up in your own life.
Perfect. So we have about a minute left. And if you're done, you can go ahead and share in the chat, if you would, please. And that would be fabulous. So please share in the chat if you'd like about your experience just now. And Lorca, that's been almost two and a half minutes already. Narrow on finding a man that is trustworthy. Tara, my heart is giving you lots of love. Okay, we'll continue to share if people share in the chat. Lorca, go ahead.
Okay.
So when you are cracked open, you know, like say, for instance, Tara, you know, about her relationships, that you are cracked open. Monica says, when I'm living in a place of fear or anger, I feel tight and limited without the ability to see or feel beauty. Laura says, I'm reminded of the line from Indigo Girls, I wrapped my fear around me like a blanket. I miss out on the full gamut of human experience when I'm closed up. That's so true, Nancy. And when I live narrowly, I feel the distance from my true self. So true.
Yeah.
And finding your true self is something I'm very interested in, and something that Lorca is definitely helping with. And then Dolores says, carrying around the past and worry about the future like a big bag of thorns without enjoying the good things in my life every day. And that really does come down to being present, doesn't it? And really appreciating the awe and amazement and wonder that's all around us, because it surrounds us, but we forget so often, don't we, Lorca?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's a paradox that we are that one of the reasons for not opening open is because we're afraid we'll be made small, right? Because of comparison, or because and so there's actually, I think, even a natural resistance to amazement in some ways, right? But I think we are more vulnerable to the resistance when we have a greater need to pretend. And this is it feeds back in on both of those things feed on each other. So it's not a matter of saying one or the other is the more important. I think it's a matter of like finding a few like chisel points and starting to crack away at the thing. And humility is both one of my, it's actually, I don't know if it's always been like this, but right now I would say humility is one of my favorite access points to amazement. And it's one of my favorite, actually even physical experiences, right? And it is scary to say, I am tiny, I am ineffectual on the large scale of things, that that compared, the scope of me compared to the scope of everything, even that the human brain can conceive of, which is limited, right?
It's so limited.
Yeah, quite limited.
So limited. I want to be here. I don't want to be here.
I mean, part of it, your rational side would ask, like, why would you even do that, right? You want to paralyze yourself with, like, make yourself ineffective because you just like, I can't accomplish anything, I can't do anything. And at the same time, I think that the experience of humility is very close physiologically for me to the experience of freedom. And it's very close to the experience of joy. And it's very close to the physiological experience of pleasure, right? For me, there's this safety actually in humility. And it partly it is because we're giving away power in a sense. And the good news is it's not going to last, right? I think humans are pretty much designed to say, nope, I got this. Like, I'm going to make a difference. I can do things. And we have all of this evidence that we can.
Yeah, we're very resilient.
Yes. So you don't have to worry about, staying in, as a moat in the void. But I know that becoming friends with humility allows us to, yes, lightness, Tara, and allows us to, yes, to experience a lightness as we move forward in the world, right? And it allows us to cast aside relatively or comparatively more easily our assumptions about how other people are judging us or thinking about us or waiting on us or assuming, because that takes up a large amount of time. It takes up a large amount of time and energy, which I'm less and less willing to hand off. Right.
Why would we do that?
Yeah. So
if we really were our true selves, we wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah. So, I think the access points to that humility are, one, would be, there's a few questions, right? One of them is, well, do I really know that? So our voice says, oh, people are going to think I'm like this. Like, do I have evidence? Do I really know this? Right? Like, if I don't know it, I'm going to choose the assumption that suits me. Right? Or another, I have a written up on my mirror there. It says WAYT, which someone told me this last year, which stands for, why are you talking?
Why are you what?
Why are you talking? And and it's a reminder that, other people's minds and hearts are amazing. And am I listening enough? And am I accessing enough? And am I softened enough? Am I allowing other people's thoughts and agendas to be as present as mine? And so in a conversation, right? Or is this a three-sided conversation of this person, me, and then my agenda, right? That never goes particularly well. So yeah, asking, could I take off a little bit of armor? How much do I not know, right? What is mysterious here? And is it possible that everything that is mysterious is having a seminal effect on what happens next? And the answer is always yes, right?
Right. I think this is a good.
Know that is affecting things. I'm sorry, I've got a thing going on.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I interrupted you as well, but I think that this is a good time to talk about change and risk. And the invitation that you have to our attendees today to think about that.
Yeah. Change and risk are a wilderness. They're the wilderness to us, right? And they are, I'm sorry, is it dinging to you? I'm trying to figure out whether that's just me or you. Okay. They are the wilderness, and we are afraid of wilderness, and we don't feel comfortable. We design massive tracts of the domestic and the safe and the architected and the in order to feel safe from what is wilderness to us. And what actually is wilderness is a moving line. And so we make huge amounts of effort that gets put into place so that we avoid change, right? And avoid risk. And that's smart, right? I mean, it makes complete sense for us to do this. And as a result, we have civilization. What gets tricky if you are looking at yourself as an entity that is being invited to stand as resilient is whether that stance of saying, I do everything in order to feel safe, and therefore I am safe, does that make you robust or fragile? And up until a certain point, it makes you robust, right? And past that point, you are very fragile because it is an illusion. It is not the truth. You are never safe, and you never have been, right? I am never safe, and I never have been. And I could say I've put very large amounts of emotional energy, as much as anything, over the years into saying, I'm never going to get hurt like that again, right? I'm never going to suffer like that again, because I can't. I'll crack into a million pieces if I feel like that again. That's whether it's true or not. That's the internal message that I was getting. And so being willing to venture out into first the admission that we are all leaves in the river, right? And that's scary right there. And at the same time, that is an entry point into really becoming resilient, because you can say, okay, I can stop putting all of this energy into having to, build this massive castle that may or may not protect me in the case of invasion. Or I can say, you know what? What are the internal skills and ways of being that I can create inside myself that mean that every danger that comes, I am meeting it as it is, with an elegance and a grace and a strength. And so we can then become someone who is resilient beyond our imaginations, right? Because everything that we do to be safe, whether it's collect, lots in a savings account, or train ourselves in martial arts, or get lots of likes on Facebook, or like whatever kind of thing you're using to measure, like, feeling okay, right? That you don't have to try to protect for everything, right? That you're going to be able to move straight in. As someone who believes in the existence of change, who knows that existence is risk, and has started down that path of befriending both of those things. And we have a lot of uncertainty right now, and we have a lot of uncertainty pending, and we can imagine, a lot of ways in which that uncertainty can unfold in different directions that we may or may not be ready for right now as who we are. And instead of feeling that we have to put the impossible amount of effort in to prepare specifically for all the things, right? Then we can say, you know what? I want to be someone who is amazing at change, who is friendly with the existence of risk, who thinks about intelligent risk, and who thinks about designing alongside change rather than fighting it.
Wow, I love that so much. And it's such an invitation to all of us to do that. I do just want to share in the chat an aha moment from one of our participants today, saying, my fear is that negative feedback means I'm insufficient. The truth is that feedback reveals a lack in my skills or effort, but not in my value. I just think that that is so profound. And thank you for sharing that aha moment with all of us.
I'm going to throw in one more piece to that.
Please.
It may not be about you.
Do tell, Lorca.
Negative feedback, right? Negative feedback could be if that person is present, right? If that person is present and there is no drama or trauma involved in that person, then they are with you and they are mirroring to you exactly what shows up with them and with you, right? And that's deeply valuable, right? And then you're like, oh, a new skill, I'll go get it, right? Or a new skill, I don't want that skill, and so I'm going to change my trajectory or whatever, right? Or I'm going to have a conversation. All of these things are possible. However, it is possible that a negative feedback is you're here and they are coming to you, whatever is happening here is bouncing right back off and hitting, it's a blind spot that they have. And so they are being re-traumatized, even on a micro level, potentially, by something that is theirs and not yours. So I'm not saying I don't even have any idea how often that's the case. I think it's pervasive. And it's worth just asking yourself, is the possibility that some of this is not about me? And if there is, then you just kind of can loosen your shoulders a little bit and move forward.
So Lorca, we've talked about so much today, right? And so where can we go with all of this? I mean, where can we take awe, wonder, and amazement, and then, leading into curiosity, because curiosity is, really the zest of life. So, but first, let's talk about where can we go with all of these messages that you've given us today?
I'd like you just in your notebook, I'd like you to write down, the number of times I have experienced awe or amazement this week is, and write it down.
And then I think, Hannah, we have a slide that would be really appropriate right now. And it's just such a beautiful quote if we have that. So can you go ahead and hit present there? So this is such a beautiful quote that Lorca and I have been talking a lot about. May you live all the days of your life. And such a beautiful combination of words there in such a short quote, but it's so meaningful. Do you want to talk to us about, I mean, we really want to live into this.
I've always thought, I love this, the author Jonathan Swift, so what is fun for me about this is that it always reminds me of the Irish blessings / curses, right? Like, may you have many children just like you, right?
Okay, that's amazing.
And so the first thing that you can start doing actually is that, you know, it may or may not have been easy for you to write down how many experiences of being amazed do I have in a week, right?
Mhm.
And so the first thing you can do is like, are they happening and you're not forgetting them? Are they not happening? Like, how do I know these things, right? And just the human memory is very bad at tracking stuff like this. Like, just as like if I asked you what you ate this week, you're like, foods. So the first thing that you can do that naturally builds the muscles of paying attention is tracking, right? Mapping. And you can do this in any possible way. You could use charts, you could use beads on a stick, you could use a journal page where you just decide for 1 week, every time something amazes you or opens you up or cracks you open, you know, on any level, that you can start writing down, right? What was it? What was the date and time? What was the thing? How did it make me feel? Right? What happened in my body? Is anything different afterwards? I don't know, anything like that. So the first thing is tracking. And then the second thing is actually start designing your life for it. A resilient leader, which is what I design and teach in the world, is someone who does not wait for these things and hope they happen, or just not even hope, like just sometimes they happen and not. You open yourself, you create the invitations, you design it, you expose yourself to the unknown, you make yourself a beginner again, you reinvite innocence into every morning. You know, like you pretend that you're an alien that just landed. You're like, this is amazing. Like, this is
okay,
wild
so
stuff.
that is just a perfect introduction to curiosity. Let's talk about curiosity. And you know, it's really the front door to life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like this opening of what you can find in the everyday.
Right. So if you haven't, you know, done any entries for a little while, and I almost want to say like, oh, in the last 20 minutes, if you haven't noticed it, that's kind of an advanced version, but not unserious, right? You know, I could get amazed looking around my room like that, right?
I could too.
Okay.
Yes.
And if I just think about what's happening under the soil right out here, and if I look at videos of anything to do with mushrooms or mycelium or fungi, right? Some astonishing stuff that's happening in our galaxy and solar system and beyond. The human mind, the human lives just completely stun me every day. And today I walk out and I, you know, just walking outside and feeding animals and watering, and every single animal I have, I look at and I can just be like utterly taken apart by, right?
Mm-hmm.
And shoot, I'm forgetting a quote right now, but it's one that one of the, I think French, no, I forget which one. Anyway, artist, he was like, you know what? People, you know, if the world actually truly saw a carrot, there would be a revolution. Right?
Say that one more time.
I'm madly misquoting, but his point was, you know, as artists, we actually really look at something and really see it. And he said, if people truly could see, like if they saw a carrot, there would be a
Yeah.
revolution, right? We couldn't make the same decisions that we made before.
Mhm.
There's a great video called I Pencil that unpacks how much worldwide, effort it takes to make one pencil.
Wow.
And I collect like articles and videos and photographs and ideas and history and all the time, that I then pass out to my students and my coaching clients, and because it's all there. It's all there for the seeing. And you start by saying, I wonder, I'm curious, right? Yeah.
I love that so much. We were going to just talk briefly about inviting people to think of something difficult, frustrating, where you're stuck, or resentment. So we only have a few minutes left, but I want to just talk about that just for 30 seconds or so, and then go into how we can live fully into awe and wonder.
Yeah. Go ahead and take that as a really useful exercise, right? You can be, obviously there's the kind of beauty, amazement, awe, wonder, where it just like, right? You're immediately open to it. But I love using it actually as an access tool. So let's say find something right now that you feel resentful about, right? Someone's behavior or their way of being, or and just invite yourself to ask, what is possibly the bigger picture here that is involved, right? And this could be, parents do this all the time, right? There's a massive meltdown in the grocery store and you have a
We've all seen
toddler
that.
kicking and screaming, right? And on the floor, like grabbing around your ankles, and there's a part of the voice of the mom that's going like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me and they're thinking this child should be quiet and I should be a better mother, and like you hear all those shoulds, right? And instead, a mother, when she's well, right, at a level of, has a fuller level of resilience, that capacity, then she looks at the situation, she's like, there's a temper tantrum. This isn't about him, his personality or his upbringing necessarily. It's not about me only, right? There may be hunger involved here. There may be like sensory overload involved here. And that could equally be true for that woman standing like looking at him stunned, right? and so, I'm going to take the biggest possible breadth of understanding and compassion that I can, and say, what's really needed right now here is for me to, accept that this is a larger situation than my first impulse, and say, I'm going to make this into something that that I can move forward with and meet all the needs, right? Yeah, which might look like picking up the child and taking them out and giving them something to eat and calming them into a space that's comfortable.
And then we've put on, thank you for sharing that. And then we've put on the screen compassion in 3 parts as kind of a wrap up. Do you want to talk about that quickly? We're running over time because I could talk to you for hours, Lorca. So like, can we just go for like a couple more hours? That would be amazing. Yes. So let's do compassion in 3 parts in about a minute.
I want you to notice as you, the next time someone says, oh, you're being too hard on yourself, or you should be more compassionate with yourself, or it's not just letting go or being nice or any of these things. There are pieces to it that if they're missing, it will feel incomplete. And by checking which ones you might be skipping, you can actually create a much more deep relationship with reality and people. So the first one is, when there's a situation that invites compassion, where compassion would be applicable, right? The first thing you do is you acknowledge there's pain. Acknowledge that something hurts. Acknowledge that there's suffering right here. Like, this isn't okay. I don't feel all right. That didn't feel good, right? And then the second step is say, you know what, that's really normal, right? Someone else in the same situation would be experiencing the same feelings, right? That's very human. So you see that there's a common humanity to that response, right? That this person isn't weak or wrong or failing, or that you aren't, right? And then the last thing at that point, add kindness. And this is a muscle that you build. You get really good and you get faster at making sure all three of them are in there. But you'll notice, there are people who completely skip the first one, for example, right? Or the second one. And maybe they add kindness, but they have never even said, oh, that hurt. So you can see we're missing any three of these, right? If you acknowledge the suffering, but also judge the person as your second step, then it stops being compassion. So practice on yourself first. Go slow first, check for all three before you get super fast. Then practice on others. Then practice on the land and your environment, and then practice on the world.
I just love that. And this is truly an invitation to all of us to be curious, have compassion, and live into awe and wonder every day, every moment of every day. And in closing, do you have some closing thoughts?
That it's kind of funny to think about, but if someone said, look, I'm going to give you a pill, right, that has no negative side effects, and it's going to give you extra energy, and it's going to make you handle everything in your life better, you'd be like, fine.
I would take that, but
maybe I'll say a potion.
I think there's a better option.
Right? I mean, if someone, offered you this as a possibility, you would take it. And so that's really how I feel about this. I feel that as it's a responsibility for anyone who is in themselves the ecosystem that other people are living in, and who is having an impact on our planet, that we take advantage of every really leveraged entry point that we have. So for me, wonder and awe and amazement are risky and delightful and essential, and delicious and intoxicating.
Let's just end on that, delicious and intoxicating. And so like I said, we just invite all of us to look around and be in amazement and be curious. And I just want to thank you, Lorca, so much. Every single time we talk, like I said at the beginning, I'm blown away, awe-inspired, and my life is better every single time we talk. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your personal amazement with all of us. I'm so grateful. It was just a beautiful last hour.
So fun. Thank you. I loved it.
And we'd like